Hello, everyone. So welcome back to the Sustainability-Tea-Time Podcast hosted by the University of Victoria Sustainability Project. We are recording this podcast on the homelands of the Lekwungen speaking peoples and the WSÁNEĆ peoples. We are a student-led, student-funded organization dedicated to sustainability on and off campus. My name is Emma Jane. I am a first-year student at UVic. And today I will be speaking with hosts Lindsay and Anne-Marie, and we will be talking with Ruth, who is the coordinator for the Students of Color Collective. Lindsay, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey everyone, my name is Lindsay. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the chair of the UVSP and I'm a second year student at UVic. Anne-Marie?
Hello everyone, my name is Anne-Marie and I'm a master's student in the Department of History at University of Victoria, and I also am a work study for the UVSP.
Awesome. And Ruth, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Ruth Nakalyowa. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the coordinator for the Students of Color Collective.
Awesome. So the first question we have for you is, who is the Students of Color Collective, and what do you do, and what are your mission and goals?
Yeah, so SOCC, we call it SOCC. We are a collective made up of Black, Indigenous, and/or persons of color. So anyone who identifies as racialized pretty much is our demographic. And we do a whole bunch of different things, but we try to prioritize BIPOC students at UVic and their healing and empowerment. And we're doing a lot more, right now we're a lot more in the planning stages of some of these things, but we hope to launch a BIPOC empowerment series so that our students feel seen and heard, because that is, I'm sure we're going to talk about challenges later, but that is a recurring theme. We also have a physical space, which of course, because of COVID, we can't really access right now, and it's also under renovation, but we're hoping that end summer, early fall, that folks will be able to come and use that space to, hang out, network. We're going to have a whole bunch of new furniture, so really great space for folks to chill. We have a library made up of books by BIPOC authors. We think it's important to have books where the protagonists are not just white folks, as we usually see in our classes, in our everyday lives, but also to hear from folks who have those similar lived experiences. And we are actually also in the process right now of ordering a new book. So we have an updated library coming soon. And then, the fun stuff, the social justice programming and anti-racism work. A lot of our work right now is behind the scenes, just working with some of UVic's leaders, working with the UVSS to ensure that, we have resources available for BIPOC students. And this could be from mental health, to funding for anti-racism projects and so on and so forth. And we've been at capacity, as a lot of advocacy groups are. So we haven't been able to, we have a growing number of white folks, especially, who want to know how they can help, how they can get involved in anti-racism work. And so currently working and thinking through some programming where we can involve white allies who really want to be involved, and hoping that SOCC can guide them. So we do a whole bunch of stuff. My day is never boring, from prioritizing healing to helping folks go through navigate these spaces that we usually find ourselves in and may not always feel seen and heard.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for doing so much work towards us and basically doing the groundwork for this important leadership on campus. So you mentioned that you do a lot of education and awareness and you're in the planning stages. I guess what we wanted to know and just ask one of the leaders of this amazing organization is what you find the most fulfilling about this work and what you find the most challenging.
Yeah, I mean, The most fulfilling is when you plan something and folks are actually engaging. It really does suck, especially on Zoom, when you have, you and other students of color have done all that emotional labor, all that work, and you're like on a panel and you're speaking from the heart, and then it's like crickets in the audience. So I think for me, what I find fulfilling is when folks are engaged and asking really great intentional questions about how to really not just do the performative allyship that we are seeing a lot of, but really digging deeper and really starting that journey of becoming an anti-racist. So I really like the engagement that I'm seeing, but I think most fulfilling is when we have, because as I mentioned, we have those events which are closed and specifically for BIPOC, and then those that are open. So in these specific BIPOC spaces, when we have, for example, the storytelling event last week, where we had a BIPOC student lead that, and go from a workshop to a storytelling circle where folks were able to share. I think when any coordinator, facilitator, whatever your position is, when you have been able to contribute to a space where folks feel like they can share, even if we don't know everybody, we don't know everybody's story, but somebody can really open up. And some of the stories are about pain and about, racism and, unable to get that justice that's required, or something really, really mean that someone said. And, for folks to feel brave enough to share that and, feel like it's therapeutic for them to come and access SOCC services and feel like their experiences are valid and other folks have gone through similar things. It's always great. So most fulfilling is community, I would say. Challenges, I think, it's a pandemic. So where everything is on Zoom. So folks have Zoom fatigue and you want to do a lot, but there's only so much you can do after a long day of classes online and all of that. And, we do have limited funding. So it's not like we can really, I think what a lot of students have shared is that the financial burden is heavy. And, it's sad that because we can't just give that out because we don't have all those resources, and a lot of advocacy groups, a lot of BIPOC advocacy groups across the country, across the world feel this burden where there's sometimes all you do need is those resources and you're unable to give that. And then another thing that I see coming up is, mental health and how that has specifically affected, for example, there's a spike in anti-Asian hate crimes, for example. And so, yes, we're all dealing with a pandemic, but on top of that, Asians have to deal with somebody blaming them for a whole pandemic and, being violent towards them. So those are the painful challenges because, as coordinator, how can you even take that on? If somebody does come and share with you, there's only so much that you can do. So I think that's the challenging part of the job. And also, as a Black person myself, you can't switch off. So I feel like my job really is 24/7. There's only a certain amount of hours which I give to SOCC, but it does feel like I'm on all the time because it's not like I can switch off Zoom and my laptop and all that, but I can't switch off my Blackness. So that's also a challenge. Burnout, I would say, is a major challenge.
Yeah, for sure. And then you were mentioning a lot about how some of the challenges are being like, you only commit a certain amount of time to this, but obviously like there's other things that happen and it's like the work never stops. And so I'm curious about how do you think that UVic is working towards anti-racism and like how they're doing with that? Like what are they doing? And yeah, what do you think about that?
That's a good question. And honestly, I'm not too sure. I think a very, a habit that has to stop, and it's not only with UVic, it's with other institutions as well, is that we tend to work in like little silos. Like a lot of us really are doing the same work, but we don't know much about each other. We don't collaborate, and we don't know what the next place is doing. And it shouldn't be a competition of, who's doing the most and who has the most money. It should be, if we really want an equitable, inclusive campus, we really should be working together. So I'm not really sure of what UVic is planning on doing. I have kept up and tried to, I know that we've been approached to speak to some leaders, and I know a student went on our behalf and spoke with some leaders about what changes they would like to see. I don't know if you folks were involved in the Reddit Ask Me Anything that the president did, but somebody did directly ask him, what is the university planning on doing? What are the plans? And he had a very good answer, and I hope it really was from the heart, because I'm going to actually hold him accountable to that, because he put it on Reddit and he said that we're not moving fast enough. And we want to see, he personally said he wants to see things, moving faster, and he's working with EQHR to make that happen. And so I'm glad that he put that out there, because now we can start talking about timeline. How soon can we see some changes? What are these changes? And he did say that he's going to be reaching out to but the BIPOC community, staff, faculty, students, and all of folks who are doing this work. And so I'm hoping to hear from UVic soon, because we do operate separately in a way. And so I'm hoping to hear more about those plans and be involved, because we do work directly with students, and we do have some information that students directly tell us during these sessions that I think would be really helpful in coming up with some great action items that we can actually see through, instead of just talking and all of these theoretical, whatever, using words I don't even understand, being stuck in these big ivory towers. Let's break it down. So students are saying, their mental health, they're struggling, and they want to see more BIPOC counselors who have that lived experience and can offer them approaches that make sense for Black, Indigenous persons of color. Okay, easy fix. Let's get in some BIPOC counselors, things like that. I want to see actions that we can actually say by the fall, we're going to have done this, and this is how we are going to be measuring success, instead of just talking theoretically and having really great statements online. So that's a very long sentence, a very long answer to say that I don't know what UVic is doing, but I'm hoping that I'll be involved more.
Our next question here is, so you've mentioned some of the resources that you offer through SOCC, but what do you think are the most important resources that you offer to students?
I think these workshops where folks can come and, share their experiences. Last year we did a mindfulness circle, and we were able to get some tips from a facilitator, a BIPOC facilitator, on the different approaches that we can take to our wellness. So I would say that those spaces, the spaces that we offer for healing and sharing and community, are the most important. I think things are going to look a lot different in the fall. I can't really say, but I think when we're able to actually physically come together, we'll feel like we're really doing more. I started this position in July, so everything has been online for me. So there hasn't been that, face-to-face connection, and I'm hoping that we can, things can get better and we can do a lot more of that in the new year.
Then our next question is kind of like, how do you think your work with SOCC intersects with sustainability, and what does that look like, I guess?
How are you defining sustainability in this sense?
So we have a really broad definition of sustainability. So yeah, we think that sustainability is social and environmental, and that you can't have environmental justice without having social justice. So that's kind of our very, very broad definition of sustainability, is basically justice.
Yeah, no, I get that. And maybe I'll add, coming up with change that's long term and that is going to benefit a lot of people, not just benefit the four of us in this little Zoom call for this, but even those who come after us. And this work cannot be done without looking at it through the intersectional lens. And so I try to approach it that way, because I'm not just Black. I'm Black, I'm a woman, I'm an immigrant, and a lot of folks have those different intersections when they come into SOCC space. And this is when I have to say that I'm not an expert in this on this topic, and I am also doing a lot of learning myself to see how we can bring in a lot of these other topics, because I'm learning more about like environmental racism and how folks of color are disproportionately affected by some of these things. And so I think it's something that I'm also researching more on and taking the time to really learn and seek advice and support from people in these other fields to see how best we can do work that is intersectional, is long term, and it brings in the ideas and I don't know, actions from different groups of people.
Yeah, and that's definitely been like a focus for us as well, is like trying to learn like all of those intersections, because like you said before, like I think UVic tends to work in all of these different capacities, but we're so interconnected in the advocacy work that we're doing, and yes, to like separate it is to like, to give us like individually less power. And so, for sure.
Yeah, and there's definitely power in like I've been saying, in coming together. And you may think, okay, maybe you VSP and this group and GEM and Pride, maybe we're doing different things, but there's also some similarities in the work that we do. So coming together and brainstorming and being like, hey, I need more support in how this links with sustainability and the work that you're doing, and how this leads to, I don't know, like community garden and all of that, and how can we come together and see that our work makes sense for all the different communities that we serve. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, because like here at the UVSP, we don't want to just be advocating for no single-use plastics, or like to people stop using like non-recyclable water bottles or coffee cups or whatever. Like that feels very hollow for us to project that kind of like message on people, and it's not what we stand for. We stand for intersectionality, and we want to be involved with you, and we want to support you in any way we can. And that's one of the reasons why we're here today. So I think I'm really interested to hear your answer for the next question, which is just wondering if you could speak on who inspires you to do the work you're doing today.
Who inspired me? I wouldn't say that it's just one person. I think my whole community has inspired me in one way or another. The world and, unfortunately, the hate that we see has also inspired me to do this work. It got to the point where being silent and going about my own day didn't feel right anymore. And a lot of folks see me and see that I'm a Black woman who's not from here and think that I don't have any privileges, but I also do come in with my own privilege. And it would have been very easy for me to be in my corner and not do anything or say anything. But I felt the need to, use my voice and use my privilege and the spaces I'm in to really do advocacy and anti-racism work, because there are folks who feel like, they're burnt out. They feel like they've been pushed to a corner. I'm from Uganda. I grew up in different countries on the African continent, and I didn't really learn or talk about Black identity until I moved to the US. And this was when I was 16 years old. And so that's when I started learning about, what my skin color means to the rest of the world, and the weight that's now added and the pressure because of the color of my skin. But there are people who have been feeling that for decades, and they're just so exhausted. And so seeing how other people were organizing rallies and having these discussions and, calling folks out and applying the pressure, I think that inspired me to also, get on board and explore how I can lend my voice, how I can work with other folks. And I love working with the community. I love interacting with students. I know what it feels like to navigate these very white spaces and not feel validated. And so I think being around people and listening and learning from folks inspired me to this work. So I wouldn't really say it's just, I wouldn't really say it's just one person. I think it's the whole community.
So my next question here is, what would be the best work for white students to do to further anti-racism at UVic?
The best work for white students to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot that white students can do, and I would definitely say that definitely educate yourself. Because there is a need to unlearn some of these harmful white supremacist things that we have been taught. But don't get so stuck in that unlearning phase that all you've done is read the skin right in or how to be an anti-racist and you've called it a day. It's not enough. And so I would suggest that in a lot of these spaces, things do come up, mostly in the form of microaggressions. So when you see something, say something. Do something about it. The onus shouldn't be on the person who is at the receiving end of that microaggression, of discrimination, of racism, to constantly have to correct people, to constantly have to stand up for a whole community. So use your power and privilege to be in those spaces and speak up. Don't be a silent ally. It's very powerful when, for example, in a class, and a professor has said something that, is a form of microaggression, it's a form of racism. And yes, you're the one speaking up because it has directly offended you and affected you. But there's power in white folks coming and saying, I agree with Ruth. That shouldn't have been said because of X, Y, and Z. There's power in numbers. And I think we can see a lot more change if people spoke up a lot more. And it's not easy and it's uncomfortable, but it really has to be done. Because while it's not easy to speak up, imagine how uneasy it is when you are at the receiving end of that. So my advice is don't get so stuck in reading that you forget to do something, right? Speak on it, call it out or call it in, whatever makes you comfortable, but it really has to be done. Check in on people. All of us are not doing the amazing because of the pandemic and being away from family and being stuck at home. So, check in on each other and, be gracious and understanding. Another thing that I see a lot of is gaslighting. You have to believe folks when they say that they've experienced something. Just because you haven't experienced it doesn't mean it is not happening. So instead of saying, oh, that didn't happen to me, or, that can't be true. That's my favorite professor, or that's my favorite staff member, that gaslighting is very, very harmful and it really does take a toll. So listen, learn something and ask yourself, what is it that I can do every day to make a change, even if it's slight. We like to have grand, huge ideas. But sometimes it's also the small things that do come in handy as well.
Thank you so much. That was an amazing answer. Our final question here is, how can students get involved with SOCC?
Yeah, come to our events. We have a really fun event. No, okay, not fun, but it's a very serious event. But it's I think it's going to be one of our most engaging ones yet, because we are going to be discussing performative allyship and how to go beyond that. And if you're in a space where you are an ally, how to break down that white savior complex that we see a lot of. And, so, okay, great. You've posted your black square at Instagram. You've shown up to a rally. What next? How can you go beyond just, being performative and hiding behind your screen? What concrete actionable items can you take on to lend your voice to the BIPOC community? And so that's coming up in 2 weeks, and we'll have more information on our Instagram this week. But yeah, I would say that If you are a non-BIPOC student, that's the best way. Look out for the events which we do open up to the public, because I believe in this work cannot only be done by BIPOC folks. We all have to be involved. And that's why I want to see a balance in our activities, in our events, where we do have some closed ones, but we do have some open ones for folks who genuinely want to come and learn, to come and do that work alongside us. So you can also follow us on Instagram, SOCC Collective. You can, reach out, and you never know, maybe there could be an opportunity to collaborate. And if you are a BIPOC student, whether you feel like you're struggling or you're doing well, whatever stage you are in your life, we're always happy to see new faces, to interact with you and see how we can work together. Students want to come and have a workshop, whether it's fun or it's going to be emotional, whatever it is, I'm happy to hear that out. And we're here for students, right? It's a BIPOC student-centered collective, and so I want to hear directly from students. I want to work directly with students and do things that make sense for them. It's one thing for me to be like, this is what I needed in college and this is what I'm going to do because it's what I need, but it's better to hear from the folks themselves so that it's not this top-down, coordinator telling you to do this, so this is what we're going to do. So I'm always happy to hear from students. So if you're out there and you're listening, do link us.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, and thank you so much for the awesome work that you're doing. It was so awesome to hear everything that you're doing and to learn a little bit more about SOCC. And we'll definitely be promoting that event coming up on our Instagram as well. So look out for that as well.
Thank you, folks. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Ruth.
Hey, thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Sustainability-Tea-Time Podcast, hosted by the University of Victoria Sustainability Project. This podcast was edited by Emma Jane Beering, and the music is by Hook Sound.